I watched a man suffocate under 6 inches of wet concrete. And I didn't say a damn word. Not because I was scared of dying. Because the others looked like they'd done this before. We were halfway through a basement pour out in the hills near the state line. Private property, no permits, cash under the table. The kind of job where you don't ask who owns the land or why there are no blueprints. You just show up, work, and keep your mouth shut. Big Red was the foreman. Thick neck, thick voice, carried himself like a man with nothing to lose. He said I'd be paid double if I didn't bring a phone to the site. I said sure. That was my first mistake. The rest of the crew were locals, Nando, Twitch, Meeks. I was the outsider, brought in after the last guy, Rick, or Richie, something like that, stopped showing up. Nobody told me why. Nobody looked like they wanted to. The slab was huge. Reinforced, sunken, clean as hell, no rebar poking out, no stray tools. Just one square of gray silence in the middle of the woods. Red told us we were pouring the final layer, then sealing it for good. I was on rake duty, near the back corner, when I tripped on something solid under the surface. It wasn't a pipe. It was a foot. Tan boot, fresh leather, toe pointed up like it had been trying to kick free. My stomach turned. I stepped back fast. Hey, Red. Something's under here. He didn't even flinch. Just looked over from the chute, wiped his hands on his jeans, and walked toward me like I was wasting his time. You sure? He asked flatly. I pointed. That's a boot. Yeah, he said. And? Before I could respond, the tarp shifted. A bulge. Under the plastic. Something still moving. My breath caught. Is he alive? Red didn't even look. Not for long. My heart slammed against my ribs. We can't just. You can't, he interrupted. Or you're next. He didn't raise his voice. Didn't need to. I looked at the others. Nando stared at the mixer, pretending not to hear. Twitch wouldn't stop fidgeting. Meeks looked like he was gonna puke, but he kept spreading concrete like his hands were on autopilot. Then the tarp twitched again, harder this time. Like someone was fighting. Suffocating. The chute kept flowing. The air filled with that sharp, damp cement stink. And slowly, the shape beneath the plastic began to sink. I took a step back, throat tight. No one followed. No one spoke. We just kept pouring. The foot disappeared last. That night, I sat in my motel room, shoes still caked with drying mix, and stared at the ceiling until morning. And the worst part? I knew I'd be back on site tomorrow. By the time the police showed up, the floor had cured solid. And so had our lies. They came just after lunch the next day. 2 deputies in plain uniforms, no sirens, no lights. Just dust on their boots and questions in their mouths. Said they were following up on a missing persons report. Someone named Rick Alvarez. Sounded familiar. Red didn't miss a beat. Wiped his hands, smiled that redneck charm smile, and offered them water bottles straight from the cooler. Told them Rick left 2 weeks ago. Quit after a family emergency. Said he was unreliable anyway. Said they should talk to the guy who drove him out, Twitch. But Twitch wasn't there that day. Convenient. I stood near the edge of the slab with a wheelbarrow full of hardened mix, trying not to shake. Trying not to think about how Rick's chest had been rising and falling under that tarp. Trying not to picture the way the concrete swallowed him, silent and gray, like a living grave. Meeks kept pacing. Nando wouldn't stop staring at the truck tires. Neither of them said a damn thing to the cops. Then one of the deputies wandered close to the slab. New pour? He asked. Red nodded. Yesterday morning? The deputy gave a low whistle. Smooth work. Appreciate it, Red replied. I almost laughed. Smooth work. Yeah. We buried a man in there. They poked around for 15 minutes, asked if we'd seen anything suspicious. Red said the only strange thing was how Rick always wore the same pair of boots, even in the heat. Tan steel toe. The kind I watched sink into the floor. One of the deputies gave me a look. I felt it land on me like a weight. You knew? Yeah, I said. Day 4. You ever meet Rick? I nodded. Once. Quiet guy. It wasn't a lie. I had met Rick. For about 5 seconds. Right before they taped his mouth shut and dropped him into that hole. The cop nodded, jotted something in his notebook, and moved on. The rest of the day dragged like a dead leg. Nobody spoke. Nobody joked. Just the sound of tools and tension. Red kept us moving, kept us focused. He knew what silence could do if you let it grow. When the shift ended, he called me over. You did good, he said. You kept your mouth shut. I didn't answer. He handed me an envelope. Thick. Heavier than the last one. That's not just for today, he added. That's for loyalty. I took it. What else could I do? That night, I didn't go back to the motel. I drove 3 hours to a buddy's place in New Jersey. Didn't say why. Just said I needed a couch and something to kill the noise in my head. But it never really stops. You can leave the job, leave the state, hell, you can burn the boots you wore, but the sound sticks with you. The hiss of the chute. The slap of wet concrete. The way the plastic bubbled when he tried to scream. I haven't been on a site since. And sometimes, I wonder how many other floors Red's poured. How many other slabs are smoother than they should be. How many basements hold more than tools and mildew. If you're reading this and you're on a crew like that, listen to me. Walk. Before you get handed a rake and find yourself staring at a twitching boot, wondering if it's already too late. The hatch wasn't on the blueprints. But the screaming started after we opened it. It was a renovation job. Old farmhouse about 90 minutes outside Pittsburgh, rotting into the hillside like it wanted to disappear. The owner, a developer from the city, wanted it gutted and modernized for short-term rentals. Pay was good. Timeline was tight. And we were told, very clearly, stick to the plans. First few days were standard demo. Rip out drywall, pull nails, make way for the new. It was just me, Jason, and my cousin Rob, small crew, cheap labor. On the 3rd day, Rob took a pry bar to a section of subfloor near the rear of the house. It gave way fast, too fast, and revealed something strange. A wooden hatch. Old, thick black iron hinges. Covered in dust and rat droppings. It wasn't marked on any schematic. Not even as a crawl space. We stood around it like it had teeth. Jason tapped it with his boot. Storm shelter? I shrugged. Maybe. But why seal it under a floor? Rob, being Rob, popped the latch without a second thought. The hinges groaned. Dust flew. A dark square yawned open beneath us, deep, narrow, and lined with stone. I knelt to look. There were stairs. Rough cut. Leading down into pitch black. Hell no, I said. That wasn't on the job sheet. Jason grinned. Think we get paid extra for spelunking? I didn't laugh. We debated for maybe 5 minutes before Rob, impatient as always, grabbed a flashlight and disappeared down the stairs. His footsteps echoed longer than they should have. I remember holding my breath. I remember counting the seconds. At 15 we heard him call up. There's something down here. Looks like shelves? Another beat. Then, wait, hold up. There's... The scream cut him off. High-pitched. Sharp. Pure panic. We froze. Jason grabbed the light and shouted into the hole. Rob! No answer. Just heavy breathing. Then the sound of something crashing. Then nothing. We looked at each other. My stomach twisted. I didn't want to go down. Jason didn't either. But we couldn't leave him. So we went together. The stairs creaked under our boots. The beam of the flashlight swung across rough stone walls, hanging moisture, cobwebs thick as blankets. At the bottom was a room. Small. Musty. Caved inward at places. A few broken shelves along the far wall, and in the corner, Rob. He was sitting. Shaking. White as drywall dust. We ran over. I dropped to my knees, tried to make sense of what I was seeing. His flashlight lay beside him, shattered. His knuckles were bleeding. Jason grabbed his shoulder. "What happened?" Rob looked at us, eyes huge, unfocused. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. He just pointed toward the far corner of the cellar. "There was a woman," he whispered. "Or something. It grabbed me." We looked. Nothing there. Just dirt. Roots pushing through the stone. Jason backed away fast. "We need to go. Now." We carried Rob out. He didn't walk right for 2 days. Kept mumbling nonsense in his sleep. Stuff about long hair, no eyes, fingernails scraping stone. I chalked it up to stress. Maybe he slipped. Hit his head. Until the next morning, when we returned to the hatch. And it was sealed shut. From the inside. By the time we unsealed the hatch, Rob was already gone. And so was whatever he saw. We came back the next morning with a crowbar and a sledge, expecting to find it open just like we left it. But the hatch was shut tight, new dust along the seams, edges packed with dry soil. Like it had been sealed from underneath. Like someone, or something, wanted it closed. Rob wouldn't come near the house. He stayed outside in the truck, wrapped in a hoodie with the heat cranked full blast. His hand was still bandaged from where he'd scraped it raw trying to climb the cellar walls. He didn't speak much, just kept asking the same thing under his breath. "Did she follow me up?" I didn't know what to make of it. We hadn't seen anyone down there. No bones. No chains. No sign of life. Just dust and shelves and the echo of that scream. Jason and I pried at the hatch. It groaned, resisted, then finally popped open with a burst of stale air and something worse, something sour, like rotting wood and wet stone. We aimed our flashlights down. The stairs were visible. Same as before. But this time, the bottom looked wrong. Uneven. There was a hole in the middle of the floor now. Perfectly round. About 3 feet across, ringed with dirt and old roots. Like something had broken through. Or climbed out. Jason muttered. "That wasn't there yesterday." I didn't want to believe him, but he was right. We didn't go back down. We just stood at the top, flashlights trembling in our hands. Every time the light passed over that hole, I felt something crawl beneath my skin. "Let's seal it," I said. "Right now. Before Rob sees it." Jason didn't argue. We nailed the hatch shut, then rolled a shelving unit over it. Covered it in boxes and a tarp. Just enough to forget it existed. That night, Rob disappeared. I woke up in the motel to the sound of tires on gravel. His bed was empty, keys gone, phone still on the charger. No note. No call. Nothing. Jason tried to reach him all day. No luck. We told the site manager he got spooked and quit. Told him the basement was unstable, that we needed to lay subfloor over it and move on. He didn't ask questions. Just wanted the job done. But things got worse after that. We started hearing movement beneath the floor. At first we blamed rats. Then maybe water shifting old timber. But sometimes, it sounded like footsteps. Heavy ones. Then the smell came back. That same sour rot. Strongest near the back wall where the hatch had been. The place felt colder there. Damper. Jason stopped making jokes. Stopped whistling while he worked. We kept our boots light and our heads down. I wanted to leave. But the paycheck kept me there. It wasn't until our final day that I made the mistake of pulling up the tarp one last time. The shelf we'd placed over the hatch had been moved, just slightly. Not by us. I know it. The nails were still there, but crooked now. Bent upward, like they'd been pushed from below. And scratched into the surface of the hatch, in jagged lines, were letters. Just one word. "Hello?" I slammed the tarp back down, and didn't say a word to Jason. We finished the job in silence. Packed the truck. Never looked back. Rob still hasn't called. Sometimes I check the news for bodies found in basements. Missing workers. Strange sinkholes. I don't know what Rob saw down there. I don't want to know. All I know is that hatch wasn't supposed to be opened. And whatever was waiting under it wasn't supposed to come out. He said he fell. But I saw the push. And no one believed me. We were working a 6-story office remodel out in Cleveland, early spring, wind sharp as hell, scaffolding groaning every time we stepped onto the planks. Tight crew. All of U.S. Union, all of us trained. No rookies. No slip-ups. Except that morning. We were up on level 5, refitting the upper fascia. Me, Tommy, and Craig. Just the 3 of us, harnessed in, radios clipped to our chests. Craig was closest to the corner, where the last anchor bracket needed adjusting. Wind was picking up. Tools clanked when you let go of them. Visibility wasn't great. Tommy was leaning over, helping guide the bracket into place. Craig grunted something, couldn't hear it fully, and then he was gone. A scream, a blur of yellow vest, and a sickening crunch that echoed up the side of the building like thunder. I dropped my drill and lunged to the edge, but he was already a heap on the asphalt. Too still. Too fast. I looked at Tommy. He was staring down like he'd dropped a sandwich. No panic. No shock. Just calm. That's when I knew. I don't mean I had a hunch. I mean I saw it, the shove. A quick, sharp elbow to the side. Right before Craig went over. I didn't react fast enough. I was too stunned. And when it was over, Tommy just muttered. Slipped. Wind caught him. That was his story. And everyone bought it. The site supervisor said Craig's harness wasn't latched properly. Said he was probably rushing. They pulled up his file, pointed out a warning he'd gotten last year for working without securing his line on a roof job in Akron. Tommy? He played the grieving coworker card perfectly. Said he tried to grab him. Said it happened so fast. I didn't say a word. Not yet. That night, I sat in my truck, keys in the ignition, and stared at the steering wheel for a full hour. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I kept seeing the look on Tommy's face right after it happened. That cold, flat stare. Like he didn't feel anything. Next morning, I came in early and checked the scaffolding. Measured the gap. Looked at the angle. It didn't make sense for Craig to fall that way. Not if he just slipped. He didn't stumble forward. He pitched sideways, hard. I went to the foreman. Told him what I saw. He frowned. Didn't say much. Just nodded and said, I'll handle it. But nothing happened. No follow-up. No report filed. No safety review. Nothing. A week later, Tommy was leading a team on the same floor. Like it never happened. I tried to let it go. I did. But then I started finding things in my locker. First, a single work glove, Craig's. Then a crumpled harness receipt with my name circled in red. Then a photo. Of my house. Taken from the street. No note. No message. Just the image. That night my truck wouldn't start. I checked the battery, cut wires. The next day, I saw Tommy smiling at me from across the job site. Just for a second. Just long enough to know I wasn't imagining it. He knew I'd seen. And now, I think he's waiting. I didn't expect to find a second name on the death report. Mine. It was a copy of the incident file. Left in my locker. No envelope, no explanation. Just a crumpled Xerox sheet stamped Union copy, do not remove. Listed on page 2, under Potential Witness Casualties. My name, followed by a little note in pen. Not yet. That was when I knew Tommy wasn't just trying to scare me. He was building a paper trail to bury me in. I tried going to the foreman again. His door was shut. When I knocked, he didn't answer. Through the slats in the blinds, I saw him sitting there, just sipping his coffee, staring at nothing. He wasn't going to help me. And that's the part that still messes me up. They all knew. No one on that site wanted to lose work. Not with winter around the corner and layoffs starting. Craig's death? It was bad, but not bad enough to slow progress. Not bad enough to lose the contract. So they looked away. The next day, I played dumb. Showed up on time, kept my head down, wore a smile that felt stapled to my face. Tommy gave me a nod when I clocked in, too casual, too friendly. "Glad you're still with us," he said. Like it was a joke. Like it was a test. I was assigned to the 6th floor that morning. High work. New paneling going in. Tommy was up there already, measuring frame gaps. Just the two of us. When I reached the top, the wind hit me like a freight train. Cold, loud, endless. The scaffolding creaked underfoot, and the clouds rolled low overhead, casting everything in a dull, steel gray. Tommy didn't turn around. "You gonna talk to me today?" he asked, still facing the edge. "I don't think I should," I said. He laughed. "Why's that?" I walked up beside him. Not close. Just enough to feel the platform shift slightly under both our weight. "Because I saw what you did to Craig." His smile didn't change. "Nah," he said. "You think you saw something. Big difference." My hands curled at my sides. "You threatened me." "I warned you," he corrected. "There's a difference there too." The wind screamed. For a moment, it felt like the whole world was tilting. Tommy turned, slow and deliberate. "But you showed up anyway. Which makes me wonder, are you brave or just stupid?" I looked past him. The drop was clean. 60 feet. Maybe more. The concrete below looked like it was waiting. "I'm just tired," I said. Then I took a step back. That was enough. His stance shifted. Just a fraction. Like he thought I might come at him. I let that fear sit. "You're going to slip," I said quietly. "Maybe not today. But soon. And when you do, you better hope someone like me's down there." He didn't reply. We finished the day without another word. I quit the next morning. Sent in my badge. Didn't go back to clean out my locker. Didn't answer any calls. I left town 2 days later and haven't been on a scaffold since. 3 months later, I read about another fall on that same site. No witnesses. No camera footage. They ruled it an accident. But I know better. Because it was Tommy. And the worst part? I didn't feel relief. I felt like I was next. The snow buried the truck overnight. And by morning, Gary was gone. We'd taken the job because the pay was stupid good. Cabin remodel upstate, 6 miles past the last plowed road, generator heat, no neighbors. The client was some rich absentee asshole from Manhattan who wanted his lake house redone by spring. Said we had full access, paid lodging, and a bonus if we could knock it out in under a month. Gary and I drove up together. Mid-January. Forecast said flurries, but it turned into a full whiteout by the time we hit the last turn. Had to ditch the truck in a snowbank and snowshoe the last half-mile with our gear. By the time we got to the cabin, we were soaked, freezing, and already regretting everything. The place was solid structurally, just old, peeling paint, wood rot around the foundation, ancient furnace that looked like it was forged in hell. The interior was freezing. We got the generator running, space heaters plugged in, and huddled up with cheap whiskey and takeout we'd grabbed before the storm. The cell service died after sundown. That's when things started feeling off. Gary, for one, was twitchier than usual. He kept checking the front window every couple minutes. Said he heard something in the woods. I figured it was just nerves or a coyote, maybe a fox. But he wouldn't let it go. "I swear," he muttered, "I saw someone move out there." I looked. Just snow and trees. No tracks. No lights. "Dude," I said, "there's nobody out here but us." He didn't look convinced. We turned in around midnight. Separate rooms, both on the top floor. Cabin had this weird L-shaped hallway that connected the bedrooms, creaky floors, and no locks on the doors. Sometime around 3 a.m., I heard Gary's footsteps in the hall. Thought maybe he had to piss. But he didn't go to the bathroom. He stopped in front of my room. Didn't knock. Just stood there. I didn't say anything. Just stared at the ceiling, waiting for him to move. After a minute, the floorboards creaked again and he walked away. In the morning, I went downstairs and found the front door wide open. The snow had piled halfway into the living room. Wind-blown, ice-flecked, bitter cold. Gary's boots were still by the fire. So were his gloves. And his coat. I stepped outside, bare-armed, and immediately felt it, wind slicing through me like glass. There were no footprints. Just a single faint trail heading toward the tree line. Not walking distance. Not in that temperature. Not barefoot. I searched the whole property. Called his phone until the battery died. Yelled into the trees like a madman. Nothing. I should have hiked out. Or called for help from the emergency beacon the client left in the lockbox. But instead, I stayed. Because deep down, I didn't think Gary left at all. I thought he was still in the house. The footprints led away from the cabin. But his blood was still on the stairs. That's what kept me from leaving. I found it later that day, a small smear on the top step leading to the second floor. Barely noticeable at first, brownish, like old paint. But when I touched it, the way it flaked and the faint metallic smell, it was blood. There was no reason for it to be there. Gary hadn't come back inside. I was sure of that. I'd kept the place sealed, every door locked. And yet, there it was. One smudge on the stairs. Another on the bedroom doorknob. A third on the window latch above the kitchen sink. Tiny things. Subtle. Like someone wanted me to see just enough to wonder. I stopped sleeping. I left the lights on, every room. Generator barely kept up, coughing and sputtering like it was choking on the cold. I sat with a hammer in one hand, flashlight in the other, eyes fixed on the hallway outside my room. Every so often, I heard creaks in the floorboards. Shifts in the walls. But it's an old cabin, everything makes noise. That's what I kept telling myself. By the third night, I'd convinced myself Gary had just cracked. Maybe wandered off into the snow in some manic fugue, trying to find the road. People lose it in the woods all the time, right? Cabin fever. Isolation. Nothing supernatural, just fear, cold, and bad judgment. Then I found the note. It was tucked into my tool belt, which I hadn't touched since the first day. Folded, small, stained with something dark. A single line in Gary's handwriting. It's not alone out here. No signature. No explanation. Just that. That night, the generator died. No warning. No flicker. Just click, blackness. The silence afterward was wrong. Thick. Too complete. Like the air itself was holding its breath. I grabbed my flashlight and crept down the stairs, heart pounding like a war drum. Every instinct told me to run. But where? The truck was buried. The forest was miles deep. The beacon? Still in the locked box on the porch. When I reached the living room, I froze. The front door was open again. No wind. No tracks. Just wide open, like it had been waiting. And sitting in the snow just beyond the threshold was Gary's hat. The one he wore every job. Torn at the brim. Smelled like cheap beer and sweat. I didn't pick it up. I shut the door, locked it, dragged the couch in front, then shoved a cabinet against it for good measure. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the stairs with my back to the wall and waited for the sun to rise. When it finally did, I made a choice. I took the sledgehammer, smashed the lockbox, and activated the emergency beacon. Then I packed what I could, layered up, and waited by the window. 3 hours later, a snowmobile arrived. Rescue team. 2 guys in orange parkas. They asked what happened. I told them the truth. Gary went missing the first night. I think something's out there. They didn't laugh. They didn't ask for details. They just looked at each other, like they'd heard it before. I haven't worked a remote job since. And I still don't know what happened to Gary. All I know is, he left the house barefoot, bleeding, and terrified. And if something was out there that night, it wasn't the cold that got him. We weren't building a basement. We were sealing one shut. I didn't realize that until day 6, when I found the other wall. The one behind the one we were pouring. The one already there. But I'll back up. It was a summer gig down in rural Missouri, middle of nowhere. I'd been out of work for a few months and took the first offer I got, 8-week concrete work for a foundation extension. Weird phrasing, but whatever. Paid in cash. Guy who hired me was a soft-spoken older man named Greeley. Real polite. Pale like he hadn't seen sun in years. Said he owned the property and wanted to convert the old storm cellar into a full basement with new walls, new flooring. He only hired 2 of us, me and a younger guy named Colt. 20 maybe? Strong, quiet, didn't ask questions. The weird part was how we got in. The old cellar was accessible from inside the house, but Greeley insisted we use the rear path, through a side door under the porch. Always unlocked, always dark. He told us never to go upstairs, never to use the bathroom inside. Stay in the work zone, he'd say. It's better that way. On day 3, I noticed the basement was already partially framed, with concrete. Not cinder block. Not poured. Just thick, rough concrete walls already in place on one side. I asked Colt, "Was this poured already?" He just shrugged. "Was like that when I got here." Greeley said the previous contractor started but never finished. On day 6, we were prepping to form the final wall when I found something strange in the back corner. A seam. A line in the existing concrete that didn't match the pour pattern. Out of curiosity, I chipped at it with my hammer. Behind it was another wall. Red brick. Old. Moldy. Maybe 100 years older than the rest of the house. Colt saw it too. He gave me a nervous look. "Leave it," Greeley said from behind us. We hadn't heard him come down. He was standing on the bottom stair, pale as chalk, hands clasped. "You start messing with the structure, you'll kill the job," he said. "It's just old trash behind there. That wall stays." I started to say something, but Colt cut in fast. "Got it." We poured the concrete anyway. Filled the form. Screed it smooth. Moved on. But something about that wall stuck with me. That line in the bricks. That smell. Like damp cloth and rusted metal. The way Greeley's hands trembled when he saw us near it. That night, I drove back to my motel and looked up the property address. No listings. No tax records. Nothing. Like the place didn't exist. So I dug deeper. Found an old newspaper skin from 1981. Blurry photo. House fire. Basement collapse. One survivor, Ellis Greeley. Age 32. Same man. Same name. But the article said the fire killed his wife and daughter, and that the bodies were never recovered. We weren't pouring concrete. We were burying history. I stared at that news article until the motel's desk lamp buzzed out. Black and white photo. Headline: Fatal fire in unfinished cellar, 2 presumed dead. Then that name, Ellis Greeley, lone survivor. And I couldn't shake what the article said, how his wife and daughter had vanished in the blaze. How the fire started in the old brick-walled basement. And how the firemen never found remains. I went back the next morning because I had no choice. Rent was due. My fridge was empty. I told myself I was overthinking it. That old houses have weird histories. That Greeley was just another grieving weirdo clinging to his ghosts. But I avoided that back wall. The final pour was set for that day. All the forms were built, rebar tied in, gravel base tamped. Greeley wanted the slab thick. For insulation, he said. He watched from the stairwell as we prepped the mix. Colt didn't talk much. Just worked harder than usual. Like he wanted it done fast. When the mixer arrived, the chute was loud enough to drown out every thought. Wet concrete rushed in like floodwater, coating the forms, curling over the base like a rising tide. Colt handled the screed. I leveled the edges. That's when I saw it. In the corner. Just where that brick wall had been. A small, circular stain. rust-colored. Faint, but spreading through the new concrete like ink in water. I stepped back. Colt! He looked over. Saw it too. What is that? I asked. He didn't answer. We both watched as the stain grew, spreading faster than it should have. It wasn't concrete reacting to iron. It was something else. Like something bleeding up. Step back, Colt muttered. We finish it. We leave. He screamed over it. Buried it. We didn't talk about it again. When the pour was done, Greeley smiled for the first time. Said, "That's more like it." Handed us cash in thick brown envelopes. Said the job was over. I asked what would happen next. He paused, then said, "Now I let it set. Permanently." Colt left that night. Didn't say goodbye. Just packed up and drove off while I was checking out of the motel. Never responded to my texts. 2 weeks later, I went back. Not to work. Just to see. The house was empty. Shutters nailed shut. Driveway overgrown. No sign of Greeley. The porch door was still unlocked, same as before. I stepped inside. The air was still. Stale. It didn't smell like concrete anymore. It smelled like a tomb. I went down into the basement. The slab was dry now. Smooth. Unmarked. Except for the stain. It had come back, right over that same corner. Rust red, the size of a dinner plate. And next to it, drawn into the dust. A small handprint. Too small for Greeley. Too small for Colt. Too small for anyone alive. I left and never spoke of it again. But sometimes, when I drive past unfinished houses or see wet concrete behind caution tape, I wonder. How many things get buried in slabs no one ever plans to dig up? And how many guys like me get paid to pour? And never ask what's already in the dirt?